Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?
Welcome back to the Think Small podcast. My guest today is Luis Rodriguez with the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much for taking some time to be on the podcast today. I'm really looking forward to getting into what you guys have going on over there and what sort of the state of the region, if you will, within Texas as far as business and industry and what role you guys play in the small to medium-sized business community. So thank you so much for your time.
Well, Ben, thanks so much for having me. It's really an honor.
Yeah. I really appreciate you, your interest. I know in our pre-call, we kind of got into my, Hispanic background and why I love working with Hispanic businesses and specifically the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce locally in New Jersey. But it's very cool. It's like almost, it's come full circle, right, for me to be able to interview you as the Hispanic, president of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce in San Antonio. For me, it's like it hits close to home, if you will.
Yeah, because you're in the New Jersey area, right? So the East Coast here, and I think I shared with you what's unique about the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. It was the first kind of Hispanic business organization that it was established in the U.S. right in 1929. It was the Cámara Mexicana de Comercio de San Antonio, which stood for the San Antonio Mexican Chamber of Commerce. It was during the revolutionary period in Mexico when a lot of leaders sought sanctuary and refuge in other parts of the country, specifically here in San Antonio. And the folks that came were educated, smart businessmen and women who were very used to a certain caliber of business culture, right? But in those days, right, especially in some parts of the country, you just weren't welcomed into certain clubs or organizations. So they tried joining what was called the Greater San Antonio Chamber of Commerce, which is still here today. It's over 135-year-old organization. And since they weren't allowed to join, they just started their own Chamber of Commerce, right? And so now you fast forward nearly almost 100 years because the centennial is coming up for this chamber. It was established in 1929. So in 2029, it celebrates 100 years. Now there's over 400 Hispanic chambers of commerces throughout the entire United States. So it's just surreal being a part of such a historic organization that continues to promote the well-being of small businesses, specifically with a focus on Hispanic business enterprises, and see them scale, grow, and do great things.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the mission, again, it's very close to home. And I'm glad that you exist. I'm glad that all of the Hispanic chambers that have come after you, exist, right? As what you said was so telling, right? That, Hispanic business owners and leaders came over and, found they weren't welcome in certain rooms. So they made their own rooms. And I love that. I think it's still, it's less prevalent, right? But there's still that sort of barrier to entry. And so like having dedicated chambers for Hispanic business is like more important than ever, but also still, it's historically important, but also, like I said, more important than ever. So
yeah, you're absolutely right.
Tell me a little bit about what you have going on. I feel like this is sort of a big year in American history, right? The 250th. I'm wondering if there's any like initiatives that your chamber is kind of going on to like promote marketing with the World Cup coming up at the end of the year or in the summer. So is there anything from like a business perspective that you're kind of using now to like drum up, I don't know, excitement around the summer culture that's going to be taking place this year?
Yeah, right. I mean, the 4th of July is not only going to be our nation's 250th anniversary, our celebration. It also reminds us how young of a country we still are compared to the rest of the world. But also in San Antonio, right? It's a bit historic because this San Antonio was founded by the Canary Islanders from Spain over 300 years ago. So there's just a rich cultural history here in San Antonio. But I shared that with you because San Antonio is also known as Military City, USA. Once upon a time, you had over 5, Department of Defense's, stations here. Obviously, some were closed in the late 90s, but you still have great Air Force presence here with 2 Air Force bases, Fort Sam Houston, Joint Base San Antonio. So San Antonio is really military city USA, and in a collaborative efforts with the city of San Antonio, our Bexar County, an organization called Centro that's oversees downtown San Antonio, we're collectively coming together to celebrate the 250th celebration of America here in San Antonio. So when you have such a celebration, you're creating opportunities for small businesses as well to sell their goods and services, to maybe have an event that will not have necessarily been here years prior, but it creates an opportunity for commerce as well. And it works out in a good cadence, because in April in San Antonio, we're about to go through what's called Fiesta, right? If you compare it to something, I'll use Mardi Gras in New Orleans, right? Because it's a lot of parades, a lot of food, a lot of history of celebration of cultural, and so that's going to bring almost a $400 million economic impact over the next 11 days when it officially starts April the 17th as well. So, we have Fiesta that's taking place, the celebration of the 250th anniversary for America. And also, just to throw something else on top of it, we have the FIFA World Cup in the Americas, right? What's taking place in Mexico, United States, and Canada. And although San Antonio was not a city that was selected to host the game, you have two neighboring cities in Dallas and Houston that there's going to have tremendous spillover over visitors visiting Houston and Dallas. And so, Austin and San Antonio have collaborated to host a few camps for some of the visiting teams. And so there's just a lot of excitement taking place here in, Central Texas, per se, in San Antonio, starting in April all through summer, right? So a lot of opportunity for small businesses. I think I shared it with you in our initial conversation that, San Antonio, military city USA, such a historic city with over 300 years in existence. But it's also a majority Hispanic city, for being one of the 10 largest cities in America. It's a minority majority city, right? Where majority of the population in San Antonio is a Hispanic population. It's 2/3 of our population of 1.5 million people. And with that, you have a lot of small businesses in San Antonio. That's the backbone, not only of the country, but specifically here in San Antonio. We're a small business-driven city, small, medium-sized business-driven city that employ over 55% of all the employees here in San Antonio, and really just drive our economy. So anytime you get to have events such as the celebration of our country, the 250th celebration, our Fiesta, the FIFA World Cup. Last year, we hosted the Men's Four NCAA Final Four. It creates a tremendous opportunity for the small businesses here in San Antonio.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me a little bit more about this Fiesta. It sounds fun.
It is, right. And growing up in San Antonio, you just it celebrates its history, right? And it's over 100-year-old celebration that San Antonio puts together with a Battle of Flowers parade that starts, and then we have Cavaliers River Parade. We have a San Antonio River Walk, right? That we have a parade, and then we have the Saturday night parade, the Flamboyant Parade, and so basically that draws over 150,000 visitors from across the world to come be a part of a great celebration that, again, it kicks off on the 17th of April and it extends for 11 days. And it's, I guess, the biggest it's celebration with a cause, because all the funds that have raised, you have what's called the Rey Fel Consejo, which does stand for an ugly king court, right? The Rey Fel, and that court goes and fundraises for scholarships for in our Title I school districts. You have the Cavaliers River Parade. It also does a lot of fundraising for the nonprofits. It's really a celebration. A lot of folks come together that eat great food, listen to great music. You'll have anyone from like the Toadies at Oyster Bait, so you're going back to old school, to what's considered La Semana Alegre here in San Antonio. For those that might remember, like Stevie B or that genre of music, it will be there. And then, of course, Tejano music and such. And at the same time, all this that's taking place, it's exciting because for about 19 years, this city was spoiled because we celebrated Fiesta and the Spurs in the playoffs, right? And we had a bit of a drought, but now guess what? We're back. We have Wemby It's Wemby Nation here, the Spurs. So it's the Fiesta, the San Antonio Spurs playoffs. It's just going to be tremendous celebration here in San Antonio. It takes place in the downtown area with the Riverwalk. There's a carnival. It's just a really big celebration. Food, fun, all for a great cause to raise money for nonprofits and scholarships.
That's awesome. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. It sounds like, almost like I'm like, want to check flights. I'm like, oh, let me see if I can get down there for 11 days,
Come on, man. If it's your first time, I'd give it 2 to 3 because you got to pace yourself, man.
Yeah. That's good. Well, tell me more. You're in place. You've been doing something, right? You're around for 100 years. So, growing organization, continuing to put more and more and opening up, not just Hispanic, you have other, minority groups that you're, including in your efforts, right? As far as bringing in members. I'm curious about some of the, potential like programs and what you're doing from the chamber that brings so much value to the Hispanic community and the business community as a whole.
Sure. Yeah. No, thanks. Yeah, I think we shared, right? So being in San Antonio, 2/3 of the population is Hispanic. So it's kind of, it happens organically, right? That the majority of the small businesses are Hispanic business enterprises. But yet this chamber has quickly become an advocate for the entire small business community in the greater San Antonio area, right? One of the biggest questions that, when you look at the facts, the frequently asked questions on our page, number one is, do you have to be Hispanic to be a member of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce? The answer is no, right? It's just our name, but we are access to the Hispanic market, the Hispanic consumer, the Hispanic business, the Hispanic leader. More importantly, we're also access to resources to help all small businesses here in San Antonio scale and grow. We do that through 3 main avenues, right? The first and foremost, we're constantly advocating for good guidance and proper efforts at both at our local municipality with our council members and the mayor, at the state level, at the legislature, and also at the federal level in DC on all small business initiatives, just ensuring there's no roadblocks that prevent small businesses from scaling and growing. So we listen to our small business members, take any issues or problems that they're currently experiencing, and then we sit with our elected officials and leaders and share those concerns from the small business community to ensure they can either build a bridge towards a pathway to solution, or just overall just remove that barrier for the small business community. The second way we help small businesses is through our programming. We just wrapped up, it's called the Avansar program. On Tuesday, we celebrated the cohort that just graduated in 2026. And basically people that go in through this cohort have been in business for between 3 to 6 years, are in the annual revenues between 1 million to 4 million, nothing above that. And it was a 4-month program to help scale these businesses from the things we take for granted, right? I know access to per capita will be the number one opportunity to improve for small businesses, but in order to have access to capital, you need to be financially ready. How do your financial statement looks like? How do your forecasting look like? Is it clean? Is it readable? Is it easy to present? So when you do go look for funding, your financials are ready and they're presentable in a way that you can seriously be considered to be funded or to go raise funds from a venture capital firm or a private equity firm. So we just provide really good resources and programs for our small business. And then third, just as important, we also create this platform by, I think a chamber can do well is a platform of networking where, members come, mix, mingle, get to know one another, whether it be a breakfast. We just had a really good breakfast this morning where it's networking and also learning about what the SBA is currently doing as well. But over 80 folks came this morning to have, great chilaquiles and great café de olla, but also to learn and to network with one another and start establishing relationships. I always share that because when I was a member of the chamber of the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce before working here, I utilized their networking events, their committees, everything the chamber had to offer to help me with my business. And when I launched my tech company in 2020, one of the first things I did was join, a few chambers of commerce around San Antonio, this one specifically as well, right? Just to also, through that network that I've had for the years, letting them know what new venture I was doing, right? And starting a tech company and bringing it to San Antonio as well. So that's what we do. Our biggest, flag of victory we could ever wave is when one of our small businesses, we learned they do business with one another. They got a big federal contract. They got a big municipal contract here locally because of the connections and the resources they utilize within the chamber.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. All right, so a lot of moving parts here, right? A lot of things going on. Exciting year. It sounds like an exciting many years, right? And you have your 100-year coming up in just a few years, so I'm sure that you have a lot going on there. With all this kind of going on and all this activity, one question that's kind of burning is like, what's slowing you down? Is there anything in your mind that you feel like is keeping you guys from, achieving everything you ever dreamed of, or is there?
Well, that's a good question, right? I think, I think every chamber will tell you that, and I know it's been 6 years since COVID, but, after COVID, I think every chamber really had to reevaluate who they are and what they're doing and what's their value to business organizations for them to consider joining. Because when COVID happened, you took the two platforms that any chamber could use, right? You took the networking events where people could mix and mingle and learn to do business with one another away, and also the big galas and the programming and stuff like that as well. We had to pivot and go virtual. But so I think it's still coming out of that. This chamber is doing a tremendous job in growing and scaling, maybe not at the rate it can be doing. When I used to work here at the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce over membership, and then later was promoted to their chief operations officer and vice president of economic development. But and that was in 2015. And at our highest point here at this chamber, we had over 1,300 active members. It was either us or the greater chamber on membership, who was the bigger one and whatnot. And then after COVID, I think there's been, we haven't had that same energy there. We're growing though. We're growing. We're right under 1,000 members. So I see the trajectory growing. I just don't see it happening very rapidly. And then, always something that's out of control out of every chamber is, what happens in the political field, right? Whatever's happening there is, if certain prices of certain things go up, that impacts businesses all across the sector, right? And so when it's impact, especially small businesses, whether new tariffs, when something new is presented to the economy that impacts businesses, it also impacts the Chamber of Commerce. But what we're also doing too is we're trying to get ahead of it as well. When tariffs were announced, a lot of our members, obviously being so close to Mexico, the National Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, now it's called the USMCA, was signed here in San Antonio in 1994 when it originally rolled out. So we have so many businesses that rely heavily in their trade partners in Mexico and Canada. So what we do is we gather that input and data, and then we talk to our congressmen and women and our senators and letting them know, hey, these changes that are happening are impacting the business community specifically in Texas. We're constantly advocating, but the best way to do that is with data, right? No los podemos aquejar just because. You have to be able to come with data to back it up on what the impact it's having. So we're at the forefront of what's taking place, and I think whenever there's just a change on the political scene, it impacts everyone across the boards, especially chambers of commerce.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Luis, for your time today and for sharing so much about, what you guys have going on there. I'm very excited to I'll be following you on LinkedIn and your social media because I want to see all these cool things you have going on. I do very much appreciate you being a guest with me today. If anybody's more interested in learning more about San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, I'm sure they can check out your website and find out how to be a member if they're in the local area. Thank you again. I really, really do appreciate your time.
Well, thank you, brother. Really appreciate you having me on, man. Look forward to hearing more of y'all's podcasts too. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?